Today we are going to be talking about 7. In an unidentified city of constant rain and urban decay, Detective William Somerset is preparing to retire and leave the horrors of the city. Before he retires, he is partnered with Detective David Mills, a cocky, young and short-tempered cop from Springfield, a comparatively small town. He and Somerset meet at the scene of a homicide Somerset is investigating. Somerset offers to take Mills out for a drink so they can talk and get to know each other, but Mills is too eager to get right to work and is unimpressed with Somerset's attempt to mentor him. The two investigate the murder of a morbidly obese man who was fed spaghetti until a kick to his stomach burst him open. Somerset investigates the murder while Mills is given the murder case of prominent defense attorney Eli Gould, with greed written in Gould's blood on the floor. Gould was forced to carve a pound of flesh off of his body, and subsequently bled to death. The police captain gives Somerset an evidence container with 3 slivers of a plastic-like material found in the stomach of the obese man, which he was forced to consume along with the spaghetti. Going to the victim's house, Somerset finds 3 groove marks in front of the refrigerator and finds that the plastic-like slivers fit into them perfectly. Knowing the slivers resulted from the refrigerator being moved, Somerset looks behind it. He finds the word gluttony written behind the fridge in grease, along with a note containing a quote from Milton's Paradise Lost. Somerset theorizes that a serial killer is basing his crimes on the 7 deadly sins, with 5 more to go. To give Mills and Somerset a chance to get along with each other, Mills's wife, Tracy Mills, invites Somerset over for dinner. While they are eating, an elevated train passes by on the track nearby, making the building and all its contents and inhabitants tremble. The couple mention that that's why the realtor was so nervous for them to see the apartment quickly, trying to hide the proximity of the train. After Tracy goes to bed, Mills and Somerset examine case evidence from the 2 scenes. They find a picture of Gould's wife with blood painted around the eyes. Believing that this means she is supposed to spot something about the murder scene that nobody else would, the detectives have a distraught Mrs. Gould look at the pictures in a safe house, and she notices an abstract painting that is upside down. Brushing powder on the wall behind the painting, Somerset finds fingerprints outlining the words "Help me." After running the fingerprints through a FEIS, the prints are traced a day later to a pedophile named Victor, who escaped conviction for the rape of a minor due to the efforts of his lawyer, Eli Gould, the greed victim. SWAT and the detectives raid his apartment and find Victor to be the sloth victim, having been bound to his bed for 1 year to the day, as evidenced by pictures at the scene, one taken every day from the day he is discovered. Remarkably, he is still alive but suffering from severe physical and mental deterioration. His hand was cut off and pushed onto the wall behind the painting to leave the prints. Mills and Somerset ask to interrogate Victor in the hospital, but the doctor says that he's chewed off his tongue and that his brain is mush from the ordeal. That evening, Tracy calls Somerset and requests that he meet with her. The next morning, Somerset meets Tracy in a diner where she tells him how miserable she is in the city. At Somerset's urging, Tracy reveals the truth of her request to meet. She is pregnant, afraid of raising a child where they now live and afraid of telling David. Somerset advises her to tell her husband only if she decides to have it, and he sets himself as an example. He insisted his partner have an abortion, that he finally convinced her, and now he is remorseful. Later that day, using a contact in the FBI, Somerset gets a library list of people who have borrowed books related to the 7 deadly sins. The list leads the detectives to a man named John Doe, whose apartment they visit soon after. Doe, his face hidden, sees them as he comes home, pulls out a gun and begins shooting. After a short chase, Doe hits Mills with a tire iron, keeps him subdued at gunpoint, but lets him live and suddenly flees. Mills wants to force their way into Doe's apartment, believing that they have probable cause because Doe shot at them. Somerset tries to talk him down, saying the method they used to find Doe's apartment was illegal and that Doe would go free if they caught him. Mills kicks the door in anyway. While they search the apartment, they find notebooks of his thoughts, trophies of the crimes, and a picture of Mills fighting off Doe, who, at the time, was posing as a press photographer. John Doe calls the apartment and congratulates the detectives on finding him and apologizes for hitting Mills, also telling the young detective that he admires him greatly. Their actions, he says, have caused him to change his plans, and he hangs up. They also find a photo of a young woman, a prostitute, who they believe may be the next victim. A receipt leads them to a Sam leather shop where Doe placed an order for a sexual device. The girl is soon found dead in a room with lust written on the door. Also found in the room is a visibly shaken man forced by Doe at gunpoint to wear and use the device, a large strap-on dildo with a blade attachment, to rape and kill the girl. The owner of the place, Wild Billy, can give no clue to the physical aspect or the briefcase John Doe used, as every customer used to carry special clothes or equipment into the place. The next morning, a model is found dead with pride written on the crime scene. Her nose has been cut off despite her face, upon which Doe gave her the choice of suicide by sleeping pills or calling for help and living scarred. She chose the former, and swallowed the pills. As the detectives return to the police headquarters, John Doe walks up to them, his hands bleeding. He shaved the skin from his fingertips to avoid identification and gives himself up. He talks to his lawyer and agrees that if he can take Somerset and Mills to 2 more bodies, he will confess to all the murders. Doe's lawyer also warns that if Somerset and Mills don't agree, Doe will plead insanity and the last 2 victims may never be found. Wanting a confession, the detectives agree. Somerset and Mills both have microphones taped to their chests so the rest of the task force can monitor their conversation with Doe. During the prep, Mills tries to tell Somerset about a concern he has with Tracy, but can't bring himself to talk fully about it. As the 3 travel to the desert outskirts of the city in a car, they are trailed by a police helicopter for security. Doe explains his rationale behind the murders as a way of showing people the truly evil nature of the world, as well as his desire to punish the wicked. He goes on to say he will be remembered and admired for what he has done, having been chosen to do so. As Doe speaks, the disgusted Mills is driven to rage, and screams at Doe while Somerset remains calm, but plainly worried. Once they reach the outskirts, Doe directs them to a specific spot near some power cable towers. The detectives walk Doe out to an open spot. After a few moments, a van appears and Somerset stops it several hundred yards away, leaving Mills behind to cover Doe. The driver claims someone paid him $500 to deliver a box to Mills at this place at exactly 7 o'clock. As Somerset opens the box, he recoils in horror from what he sees inside. As he races back to Mills and desperately yells for him to throw his gun away, Doe states to Mills that he admires Mills's life, to the point of being envious of his wife and the love they share. He goes further, saying he visited Mills' home and that he tried to play husband with Tracy that day but it didn't work out and he took a souvenir instead, her pretty head. It was Doe's plan that Mills will kill him, as Doe himself was guilty of envy, jealous of Mills's simpler life. He also reveals to Mills that Tracy was pregnant, and that she begged to be kept alive for the child's sake. Mills, despite the pleading of Somerset, is so devastated by his wife's death and the knowledge that she was pregnant, that he shoots Doe in the head, Doe closing his eyes to receive his punishment. Mills shoots Doe's body 5 more times. In killing Doe in vengeance, Mills comes to embody the sin of wrath, completing Doe's masterpiece. Somerset can only stand by, helpless to do anything. After a catatonic Mills is taken away, their captain tells Somerset that they'll take care of Mills, knowing the jury will condemn him. Somerset answers, whatever he needs. He also tells his captain that he will be around, implying that he will be staying on the force. As the camera pans out from the desert, the movie ends with Somerset quoting Ernest Hemingway, "The world is a fine place, and worth fighting for." I agree with the second part. A moral question of what is right and what is wrong? We know that Mills puts a bullet into the head of the man that killed his wife and many other innocent people. From a utilitarian point of view, the greater good and minimal loss of life is best, but they had this man in custody, they had been handcuffed, helpless really. This man would have gone to prison and likely would have served many life sentences without the possibility of parole, if Mills hadn't killed him. Maybe the film is exploring the necessity of the sins even in all their darkness. The film also throws a hammer into the idea of divine morality. It's saying we got it wrong and we've become sick as a society because we don't address that fact. In society these days, what's often good seems to somehow benefit capitalism in some way, other than the basic day-to-day ethics of navigating through your home or walking in the park. What's wrong or bad seems to be what's bad for business. Our greed for wealth and power has stepped on our humanistic need to grow as a species. Say 7N explores the decay of morality. It explores the idea that those with morals have to adjust themselves to the decadence of the immoral man, the conformist man, the sick man. Intelligence and understanding holds no sway on the streets of the inner city, where the rules are street rules and are often devoid of reason. The decay of humanity for the cost of beauty, wealth, things, indifference and sex is a cost we pay daily. The one time in the film where we enter into the home of one of the detectives the apartment shakes, I think symbolizing the fragile structure that is modern-day society, a place where a man can't even go to the sanctity of his own home and not be reminded of the breaking down of a city. This symbolically happens throughout the film with all the rain and the inconvenience of it all. It's not until the last act of the film when the sun finally comes out, and that's only when the detectives believe they are finally in control. But they are not in control because they are failures of the system, the one that convinces us when we can feel safe or not. The house shakes because not only is society unstable but they are as well, and they carry that with them everywhere they go. We are products of our environment, but we are also contributors to its success or to its misery. The car ride out to the last 2 victims in the third act was done quite interestingly. The metal screen that divided Mills and Somerset in the car from John Doe plays a particular important part in the editing of the sequence. Anytime we see Mills and Doe talk, the screen is between them, and anytime Doe and Somerset talk, it isn't. It's clear that Mills is more emotional about his dislike of Doe, and therefore a cage is required to keep him from acting on impulse. Somerset is more controlled and less shocked by a man like Doe, so the cage isn't required of the camera angles during their conversations. But at the end of the film, when Somerset discovers Mills' wife, Tracy's head in a box, things change for Somerset. This is new even for him, which is why I think he agrees to stay on at the force during the last scene of the film after Mills is driven away, handcuffed in the back seat. Mills was too emotional for the coldness of the concrete jungle of modern-day society, where Somerset was too indifferent. The monster of the machine beat Mills as Somerset thought it beat him, but the only solace left at the ending is Somerset now sees that the fight must come within him to ward off such evil in the world, because otherwise the sins themselves will overtake a population too asleep to see it coming. This is declared when Somerset said in the end, Ernest Hemingway once wrote, "The world is a fine place and worth fighting for." I agree with the second part. The idea is to recognize there is a problem and ultimately then a solution can be worked on. My cynical side thinks that the world is too big, with too many differences for all to get along, education is on an all-time low, and the government and corporations only wish to keep us all tranquilized. But there is a side that does see the world as a bad place but one worth fighting for. Bringing us to the end of the movie. Comment below what you think. If you haven't already, like and subscribe.